Have you ever wondered why a cartoon turtle taught millions of kids to hide under their desks, or why a smiling owl asked you not to pollute on Saturday mornings? Across America, decades of public safety announcements used mascots and mantras to change how we lived, promising protection through simple rules. Some of these campaigns slashed real-life dangers. One helped cut drunk driving deaths nearly in half, while others left behind more questions than answers. But what logic shaped these unforgettable icons, and why did so many vanish into obscurity? Today, 20 Forgotten U.S. Public Safety Announcements takes you on a guided tour behind the slogans, revealing the strange, poignant, and sometimes unsettling truths that shaped American childhood. Let's revisit what we trusted, and why so much of it faded away. A brown bear in blue jeans and a ranger hat gazes out from a faded poster, one paw raised in warning. Smokey Bear has watched over American forests since 1944, quietly urging generations to be careful with fire. His message began during World War II, when the country feared that a single careless match could devastate timber reserves needed for the war effort. Smokey's first slogan promised that care will prevent 9 out of 10 forest fires, but it was his steady voice, later immortalized in the line "Only you can prevent forest fires," that turned him into a household name. The campaign's reach was extraordinary. Smokey's face appeared on stamps, lunchboxes, and even his own zip code, 20252. In 1950, a real bear cub rescued from a New Mexico wildfire became the living symbol of the campaign, drawing crowds at the National Zoo in Washington, D.C. Children wrote thousands of letters, and Smokey's gentle authority made him a trusted guide, not a scold. His image was everywhere. In school classrooms, on radio jingles, and at county fairs, always reminding people to stay alert in the woods. By the early 1970s, a new character joined the forest's chorus. Woodsy Owl, with his bright green feathers and hiking boots, appeared on Saturday morning cartoons and classroom posters. Unlike Smokey, Woodsy spoke to city kids as well as rural families, asking everyone to give a hoot, don't pollute. His slogan, launched in 1971, was simple enough for preschoolers to repeat, but broad enough to cover litter, air pollution, and even noise. Woodsy's message grew with the first Earth Day and the rising tide of environmental awareness, encouraging children to care for parks, streams, and playgrounds. Both mascots used friendly faces and short, rhythmic slogans to turn safety into habit. Smokey's focus was fire, Woodsy's was trash, but their methods were the same. Gentle reminders that stuck in the mind long after the poster faded. For a time, their images were as common as cereal boxes or cartoon shows, shaping how millions of children saw the world around them. Today, Smokey Bear still appears on billboards and social media, though fewer children write him letters. Woodsy Owl has been updated with a new look and a fresh slogan, "Lend a hand, care for the land." The mascots remain, but their quiet authority now competes with 1,000 other voices. Their legacy lingers in the habits they started, pausing before lighting a match, picking up a stray can, remembering that safety can be taught without fear. Somewhere in the woods, Smokey's watchful eyes still remind us, a little care can save a forest, and Woodsy, perched on a branch, still asks for a simple promise, not to pollute. A heavy-browed bloodhound in a trench coat leans over a city fence, his voice gravelly and direct, "Take a bite out of crime." McGruff the Crime Dog arrived in 1980, just as American cities struggled with rising burglary rates and a wave of public anxiety about safety. Unlike Smokey or Woodsy, McGruff didn't live in the wild. He belonged to neighborhoods and schoolyards, teaching children to lock doors, mark their bikes, and look out for each other. The campaign's timing was no accident. In the late 1970s, violent crime had reached its highest levels in decades, and fear of break-ins shaped daily routines. McGruff's message was practical and personal. Safety starts at home, with small steps and sharp eyes. His "Take a bite out of crime" slogan became a fixture in classrooms and TV spots, delivered by Jack Keel's world-weary drawl. By 1981, more than 1 million crime prevention booklets had been handed out, and McGruff costumes appeared at school assemblies and parades. Children colored his picture, recited his rules, and learned to spot suspicious activity. The mascot model worked because it felt local. McGruff wasn't a distant authority, he was a neighbor, a dog who walked the same streets as his audience. While McGruff patrolled the block, another mantra echoed through firehouse visits and safety assemblies, stop, drop, and roll. By the late 1970s, this three-step drill was drilled into every child's memory. The phrase was short, rhythmic, and impossible to forget. Teachers led students through the motions: stop moving, drop to the ground, roll to smother the flames, turning a terrifying emergency into a set of automatic actions. This approach replaced panic with routine, proving that even the scariest dangers could be managed with the right habits. The message spread through cartoons, school posters, and televised public service announcements, making fire safety as ordinary as the morning pledge. Peer influence took center stage in 1983, when a new campaign challenged Americans to look out for each other behind the wheel. Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk used simple words and familiar faces, sometimes a friend's hand on a shoulder, sometimes a set of keys quietly taken away. The message was clear: responsibility didn't end with your own choices. It extended to the people around you. Over the next 2 decades, this campaign became a national catchphrase. Alcohol-related traffic deaths fell by nearly half, with the number of fatalities dropping from 21,000 to 12,500 by the late 1990s. The shift was visible at every level, from barroom conversations to state laws. The phrase appeared in music, sitcoms, and even graduation speeches, proof that a few well-chosen words could move from public service announcement to everyday rule. Each of these campaigns relied on repetition, not fear, to change behavior. Mascots and mantras turned safety into a shared language, something you could teach a sibling, repeat on the playground, or use to nudge a friend. The impact lingered long after the posters faded. Which of these slogans or mascots stuck with you the longest? Did you ever find yourself repeating one, even years later? A yellowed poster from 1942 warns, "Loose lips might sink ships," the words floating above a sinking silhouette. During World War II, secrecy was a matter of survival. The War Advertising Council filled train stations, factories, and post offices with these blunt reminders. The message was simple: careless talk could cost lives, even far from the front. Posters and radio spots told workers, soldiers, and families to keep quiet about troop movements and shipping schedules. The phrase quickly slipped into everyday speech, a reminder that danger could hide in any conversation. By the early 1950s, a new threat loomed, one that could not be stopped by silence alone. School children watched a cartoon turtle named Bert calmly snap into his shell as a flash of light filled the screen. "Duck and cover," the film instructed. At the first sign of a nuclear blast, children were told to drop to the ground, cover their heads, and stay low. The Federal Civil Defense Administration distributed the film to thousands of schools beginning in 1951. Teachers led drills where students crouched beneath wooden desks, hands over their necks, waiting for the imaginary shockwave to pass. Bert's friendly tones softened the lesson, but the threat was never far away. The film compared the atomic bomb to a bad sunburn or a strong wind, but the real fear lay just beneath the surface. For a generation, these drills became routine, an ordinary part of school life that masked extraordinary anxiety. Unlike the war posters, duck and cover didn't vanish with victory. As nuclear arsenals grew, so did the sense that disaster could strike at any time, anywhere. The phrase entered the language, a code for impossible choices and invisible dangers. The world outside the classroom changed, but the memory of crouched children and quiet warnings lingers, a reminder of how safety instructions can become a mirror for deeper fears. A clock face glows in the corner of a darkened living room, its hands locked at 10. The voice on the television cuts through the quiet. "It's 10 p.m. Do you know where your children are?" For millions of American families, this nightly question became a ritual, part warning, part roll call, echoing from New York City to small towns across the country. The phrase first aired in 1967 on WNEW in New York. Born from a wave of concern about juvenile crime and the growing independence of teenagers after dark, local news stations picked it up quickly, turning the question into a kind of curfew bell, a reminder that the world outside could change after sunset. By the early 1980s, stories of child abductions and missing children dominated headlines. Amber Alerts did not exist yet. Instead, parents relied on the steady presence of the TV announcer, whose words brought a sense of order to the uncertainty of the night. The message was simple, but the worry behind it was not. In 1984 alone, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children estimated over 400,000 reports of missing children, a figure that fueled a climate of fear, even as most cases involved custody disputes or miscommunication rather than strangers lurking in the dark. News reports amplified the sense of threat, with local broadcasts warning of vans cruising neighborhoods and unfamiliar faces at playgrounds. School assemblies drilled the words "stranger danger" into children's minds, urging them to memorize phone numbers and never accept rides from adults they didn't know. The language was blunt, sometimes heavy-handed. Anyone outside the family could be a risk. The streets, once a place for evening games and bike rides, took on a different meaning after dusk. The nightly question faded from most broadcasts by the late 1990s as new technologies and shifting fears changed the shape of parental vigilance. Yet the echo remains in American culture, a reminder of a time when a single line from the TV could draw invisible boundaries around home, safety, and the outside world. For some, the phrase still lingers in memory, as familiar and unsettling as the sound of a door locking for the night. A cast-iron skillet lands with a clang on a white stove, the sizzle of oil filling the silence. In 1987, a 30-second commercial aired across the country. An egg, smooth and whole, is held up for the camera. "This is your brain." The egg cracks, drops, and hisses as it hits the pan. "This is your brain on drugs. Any questions?" The message was blunt, impossible to ignore, and soon echoed in classrooms, late-night comedy, and living rooms. The Partnership for a Drug-Free America spent millions on this campaign, hoping a simple image could burn itself into memory where facts and figures had failed. The frying egg became a symbol of the era's approach, direct, a little frightening, and everywhere at once. But the campaign didn't stop there. Later versions showed the kitchen itself destroyed, the pan smashed, plates broken, as the narrator's voice grew louder. The metaphor was clear. Drugs didn't just change you, they shattered everything around you. Other PSAs turned the lens on the home. In one, a father confronts his son about a box of marijuana. The boy's answer, "I learned it by watching you," lands like a slap. The camera lingers on the parent's stunned face. This spot didn't warn about strangers or peer pressure. It accused, quietly but directly, making every parent wonder what their children had seen. The line became a catchphrase, quoted on talk shows and in sitcoms, a shorthand for parental guilt and the fear that bad habits start at home. Meanwhile, the AIDS crisis brought a different tone. In the late 1980s, CDC-funded ads aired in stark black and white. Tombstones, hospital beds, and grieving families replaced cartoon mascots. The message was urgent and unflinching. AIDS was spreading, and ignorance was deadly. These spots didn't offer easy comfort. They showed the faces of loss and demanded attention. For many, these images were the first honest acknowledgement of a crisis that had been whispered about but rarely named. Unlike earlier campaigns, these PSAs didn't promise that good habits alone could keep you safe. They asked viewers to face hard truths about addiction, about family, about disease. The warnings felt personal, sometimes overwhelming. The egg sizzled, the kitchen shattered, and the line between home and danger blurred. In these years, fear wasn't just outside. It had come inside the house and it was sitting at the table. A pair of dented crash test dummies, Vince and Larry, tumble across a crumpled hood as glass rains down around them. Launched in 1985 by the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, these foam-faced characters turned car crashes into slapstick routines. Their message was simple: seatbelts save lives. Each commercial showed the dummies cheerfully enduring collisions that would have killed a real person, always ending with the line, "You could learn a lot from a dummy, buckle your safety belt." The humor worked. In 1985, only 14% of Americans wore seatbelts regularly. By the time Vince and Larry retired in 1999, that number had risen to 79%. The campaign's reach went far beyond television. Toys, comic books, and even a video game brought the dummies into living rooms and back seats everywhere. Children begged parents to buckle up, mimicking the dummies' antics on playgrounds and in back seats. But the tone changed in the late 1990s. As the dummies faded from the spotlight, new campaigns replaced their jokes with real crash footage and somber statistics. Instead of foam arms flying, viewers saw shattered windshields and silent hospital rooms. The message grew sharper, trading comedy for the raw reality of car crashes. Vince and Larry's era ended, but their legacy lingers in every click of a seatbelt. Safety's lesson had been learned, but the mood on the road was never quite as light again. A solitary man in buckskin stands beside a highway, a single tear tracing his cheek as bottles and wrappers land at his feet. The Crying Indian ad first aired in 1971. Its quiet sorrow cut through the noise of early television. Viewers saw Iron Eyes Cody, a figure meant to embody Native American grief over pollution. But behind the camera, the story was different. Cody was actually Espera de Cordy, the son of Italian immigrants from Louisiana. For decades, he played the part so completely that few questioned his ancestry. The campaign came from Keep America Beautiful, a group funded by the same beverage and packaging companies whose products lined the roadsides. Their message was simple. Littering was a personal failing, not a corporate one. The ad's power lay in its emotional punch, but its sponsors had a practical aim: shift blame from industry to the individual. The image of the weeping Indian became iconic, but the truth behind it was less clear-cut. Critics later called out the campaign for greenwashing, using borrowed imagery to mask deeper problems. As the years passed, the ad's legacy grew complicated. The revelation about Cody's heritage sparked debate about authenticity and appropriation. Meanwhile, real Native activists and environmentalists were rarely given the same national platform. Today, the Crying Indian's tear lingers as both a symbol of environmental awakening and a reminder that the loudest voices are not always the most genuine. The story behind that single tear asks a harder question. Whose responsibility is it really to keep America beautiful? A man in a gold chain and a flat-brimmed cap pops up on a blocky computer screen, rapping about floppy disks and software piracy. In 1992, the Software Publishers Association released Don't Copy That Floppy, a low-budget video starring MC Double Def DP. The message was simple. Copying computer games and programs without paying was wrong. The PSA was shown in schools, hoping to make copyright law sound cool. Instead, its awkward rhymes and earnest warnings became a punchline for a new generation of internet users. Years later, the video resurfaced online as a cult classic, shared more for laughs than for its lesson. In rural communities, safety films took a darker turn. Insurance companies and local farm bureaus sponsored reels with grainy footage and unsparing detail. Overturned tractors, entangled arms, and the silent threat of grain bins. These films didn't pull punches. They showed real injuries and sometimes staged reenactments of fatal accidents, leaving a mark on any child who watched them in a school gym or 4-H meeting. Titles like Tractor Safety and Grain Bin Danger circulated regionally, often with statistics about the number of annual farm deaths. The goal was to shock, not entertain. Unlike national mascots, these PSAs were local, blunt, and sometimes hard to forget. Most faded as farming modernized and digital piracy shifted to streaming and downloads. But their odd style and raw warnings still echo online, where clips resurface as reminders of a time when safety meant a rap video or a grainy accident film. Some lessons linger, even if their delivery feels out of place today. Smokey Bear's slogan, first broadcast in 1944, is the longest-running public safety message in American history. Over the decades, these 20 campaigns shaped how millions thought about danger, responsibility, and trust. Mascots like McGruff became classroom staples, while fear-driven PSAs such as Duck and Cover and the famous Frying Egg left lasting impressions. The most effective campaigns, like Friends Don't Let Friends Drive Drunk, helped cut fatalities by 43%. Still, some efforts, like the Crying Indian, were later exposed as industry-driven, raising questions about who controls the message. Many original scripts and production files remain locked in archives, leaving gaps in our understanding of their true impact. Today, targeted digital ads have replaced mass PSAs, but their reach is fragmented and their authority uncertain. The legacy of these announcements is clear. Simple messages, repeated often, can change culture. Which one would you bring back and why?